And so at this time, we'd like to ask the Honorable Larry Irving to present testimony.
Thank you,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank you and the members of the subcommittee for this opportunity to testify today on the findings of Falling Through the Net, Defining the Digital Divide, the study released by the Commerce Department earlier this month. President Clinton and Secretary Daley released Falling Through the Net on July 8, 1999 in Los Angeles during the President's New Markets Tour. And during the tour, the President and Secretary Daley discussed the fact that even though information technology underlies much about nation's economic growth, far too many Americans are left out of the digital economy. And as a result, the digital divide, that is the divide between the haves and have-nots in information technology, has become a critical economics and civil rights issue. Access to new technologies such as the computer and the internet will be keys to the future economic success of any American business, community, or individual. And increasingly, Americans use the net to find jobs, contact colleagues, locate public information, or take courses online. Electronic commerce is helping small companies compete, and entrepreneurs in rural, remote, and traditionally underserved areas reach out to the rest of the world. Familiarity with new technologies will also prepare more Americans for the high-tech workplace of the 21st century. Because of the increasingly important role of these new technologies, Secretary Daley concluded that ensuring access to the fundamental tools of digital economy is one of the most significant investments our nation can make. And as we enter the 21st century, it will become even more essential to ensure that all Americans, rich or poor, urban or rural, black or white, Hispanic or Native American, can reap the benefits of these new technologies. Falling Through the Net provides a starting point in bridging the gap between the nation's information rich and poor. This is our third report examining census data looking at the digital divide. And we anticipate that it will serve as an important diagnostic tool to assist policymakers in the private sector in formulating methods to provide greater access for more Americans. And today I'd like to provide for the subcommittee several slides showing some of our key findings. These slides illustrate that overall, Americans are far more connected than they have been in years past. On the other hand, we have also found that there are alarming disparities based chiefly on income, education, race, and geographic location in which group of Americans have computers and who is online. It's going to be interesting as I read my testimony. Equally disturbing, many of these disparities are growing. And let me turn to the first slide. This shows...
And everyone will be in the dark if we don't get online.
Great. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Jaysha Ray, and I am the Associate Administrator for the Office of International Affairs and the Acting Associate Administrator for the Office of Policy, Analysis, and Development in the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, or NTIA, in the United States. What you just saw is a video from NTIA in the 1990s discussing the early days of measuring internet use in the United States. As you will hear, this issue continues to be of high importance, and the work continues on to this day as well. Today, we have a distinguished set of speakers from NTIA and the U.S. Census Bureau who will discuss the past, present, and future of measuring internet use in the United States. Located within the U.S. Department of Commerce, NTIA is the executive branch agency principally responsible by law for advising the President on telecommunications and information policy issues. NTIA's programs and policymaking focus largely on expanding broadband internet access and adoption in America, expanding the use of spectrum by all users, and ensuring that the internet remains an engine for innovation and economic growth. Also located within the Department of Commerce, the United States Census Bureau is the nation's largest federal statistical agency, with the mission to serve as the leading provider of quality data about the nation's people and economy. The Census Bureau provides high-quality, timely, and relevant data products that determine how legislative seats are distributed across the nation. It also supports evidence building in government and policymaking, planning decisions about community services, and the annual distribution of federal funds to local, state, and tribal governments. Together, subject matter experts from these agencies will share details about how they measure internet use, highlighting promising new initiatives and issues that require further examination in this ongoing effort. Following their overview, we want to open the floor for robust, interactive discussion with people both in the room and online. We want to hear how other countries are measuring internet use and what we can learn from those experiences. In particular, what are the missing pieces in measuring internet use? And how can the international community collaborate in this space? We hope that this open forum will serve as an opportunity to bring experts from around the world together to advance the state of knowledge for one of the most important aspects of digital connectivity, understanding how people use the internet. So to kick things off, I will ask my colleagues to briefly introduce themselves.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Chalmers, and I am the Internet Governance Team Lead in the Office of International Affairs at NTIA.
And I'm Luis Zambrano Ramos. I'm a Senior Policy Advisor in NTIA's Office of Policy Analysis and Development.
Hi, I'm Andrew Flavin. I lead the Digital Policy Team in NTIA's Office of International Affairs.
And, Rafi, are you online?
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Rafi Goldberg, and I've been working on policy at NTIA for the past 14 years. And I will pass it on to our Census Bureau friends now.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rafi. My name is Leslie Davis, and I'm the Census Bureau's subject matter expert on computer and internet use as measured by our surveys.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Heather King. It's morning for us. I work in the same division with Leslie, and you'll meet Mike after me. They're the subject matter experts on internet and computer use, and I bring modeling expertise to the table. I'm going to pass it to you, Mike.
All right, so in terms of our run of show today, first we will hand it over to Luis, who will discuss the NTIA Internet Use Survey and its history. Following that, Leslie will talk about the U.S. Census Bureau's decades-long work in the American Community Survey. After Leslie, Rafi will highlight the latest project to produce local estimates of internet adoption. Heather will then dive deeper into the technical details of this project. And following the presentation, Susan and our other subject matter experts will help steward the open forum discussion. So with no further ado, we'll get started, and over to Luis.
Great. So thank you so much, Jaysha. So I am going to focus on one of NTIA's most important contributions to the field, the NTIA Internet Use Survey. This survey is a supplement to the current population survey, which is a survey that's sponsored jointly by the U.S. Census Bureau and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. It is a monthly survey, which is primarily known as the source of some of our official labor statistics. Agencies, such as NTIA, have the opportunity to sponsor supplemental questions during particular months. Tens of thousands of households are interviewed for the CPS every month, providing a large, nationally representative sample of American households. We have worked for over 30 years with our partners at the Census Bureau on this survey. In fact, the Internet Use Survey is the longest-running federal data collection on computer and internet use in the United States. We have sponsored a grand total of 17 surveys in the field since 1994, and we're planning to get our next survey out in November of this year. So here you can see a timeline of our collections. Over time, we have transitioned from print publications of our findings to a more web-centered approach to present the results. We have blog posts and other analyses of the data, and we also have a nifty, publicly available Explorer tool that I will showcase in a bit. One very important component of the NTIA Internet Use Survey is the ability to obtain input from the public on the survey instrument itself. We include a draft version of the survey instrument and seek comment from the public before we issue the survey. This forum actually is particularly timely given that last week, on June 17th, we published a notice and request for comment for our upcoming survey later this year in 2025. So with all this said, what can we learn from the survey? So in addition to learning just about internet use generally, we can also learn things like devices and internet access technologies, details about how people use the internet, including locations and certain online activities. We also have other questions, such as questions centered around potential privacy and security concerns that may affect internet use. Here's a slide on overall internet use showing its general increase in the United States over time as a percentage of the population. This is a data that you can get using our Explorer tool, which I will show in a bit. This slide breaks down device usage. Perhaps not surprisingly, for example, we have noticed that smartphone use has gone up since 2011, while desktop computer use has decreased. And here are a few online activities that we have measured and how they have trended over time, things like social media use, telework, and the like. So, as I mentioned, we have a publicly available Explorer tool that we call the NTIA Data Explorer that allows us to play with this data. For example, if I am searching for device use, specifically laptop use, you can look at that information throughout the years. You can look at the total number in millions and percentages over the years. You can also get a table that gives you a result for each of the US states and breaks them down along with numbers, percentages, and also things like confidence intervals. Right. So again, here's just how the tool is being applied, and I think we're having some technical difficulties, but moving on to sort of the availability of this data. If you want to dive deeper, we make all the underlying raw data publicly available. We actually have a GitHub repository with sample code, and at the end of the presentation, we'll actually give a link to our website. And there you can see some of the publicly available data sets that we have. And before I pass it on to my census colleagues, last year we actually celebrated the 30th anniversary of the Internet Use Survey, and we threw a little party. You just saw that slide, and we were able to put it on a cake. And unfortunately, there's no cake today, but I welcome you all to join in the celebration. And with that, I will pass it on to my colleague Leslie from Census.
Great. Thank you so much, Luis. In addition to the NTIA Internet Use Survey, the Census Bureau measures computer and internet access on the American Community Survey, or the ACS, which is the census's flagship demographic survey. This is a nationally representative survey that serves as the premier source for timely, detailed population and housing information for the US. And it provides local and national leaders with information needed for programs, economic development, emergency management, and more. It is fielded annually to a sample of 3.5 million households nationwide and also additional group quarters. And it asks questions on over 40 topics, including internet access. And next slide, please. So in 2008, US Congress directed federal agencies through the Broadband Data Improvement Act to improve their data collection on broadband use and subscription. And this act specifically called upon the Census Bureau to add questions to the ACS that measured A, whether persons at households use or own computers at their address, and B, whether persons at that address subscribe to dial-up or broadband internet service at their address. The computer and internet questions were added to the ACS in 2013. Next slide, please. So the initial set of questions that were asked on the ACS are shown on the left-hand side of this screen, and they were designed to capture computer ownership, internet adoption, as we measure by a connection to the internet, and internet subscription type. As a result of us measuring adoption, the ACS data does not offer insights on the level of internet use within a household or the extent of digital literacy skills of a particular respondent. Furthermore, if a respondent says that they don't have a subscription, the ACS data does not tell us if there isn't an internet service provider, thus not allowing for the subscription, or if it's due to another reason, such as the cost of the subscription. The ACS questions were revised in 2016, which you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, and their current versions remain as they were in 2016. These changes that we made were implemented after feedback received from survey methods experts and undergoing thorough content testing. And the changes were aimed to address potential confusion with question wording, response categories, and definitional clarity. The first question you'll see on the screen is our changes to device ownership question. And given the focus of today's talk, I'm going to switch to the next question, which asks about internet access. Here we replaced the language regarding subscriptions to paying a provider or cell phone company, which helped to reframe what it means to subscribe or adopt to the internet for our respondents. Next slide, please. As for our internet types question, we altered the language of mobile broadband plan to cellular data plan for clarity. And this change alone improved our response reliability drastically. We also collapsed the high-speed categories of cable, fiber, and DSL to improve question clarity and also distinguish this category, which is fixed to a particular location, and compare it to the mobile broadband option. Again, here we removed language related to subscription and changed it to access to the internet, which improved our response rates. And as you can see on this question and the device type question before, we also offer the opportunity for respondents to write in a particular internet service type or device type that they may not see on the questionnaire. Clerical coders at our headquarters can match these write-ins to our categories as best as possible and reassign those write-ins as needed. So for example, if a respondent wrote in Comcast for their internet service type, which is a provider of cable and fiber internet in the United States, we can typically assign that respondent to high-speed broadband on the back end. Next slide, please. So based on the ACS, the Census Bureau publishes 1 year and 5 year estimates. And the main difference between the two is the level of geographic granularity captured in the estimates. Our 1 year data can go down to the county and place levels for the geographies that match our population threshold of 65,000 and over, which helps us ensure confidentiality of our respondents and ensure reliability. The 5 year data, which brings together 60 months of data, can go down even smaller to the census tract and block group level, as you can see on the hierarchy on the screen. Next slide. Tables on the screen provide some context for how small these geographies are. So for example, for the 1 year data, our counties are the largest sub-state geography. They are highly variable in geographic area and population size. So for example, Los Angeles County in California has about 10 million residents, whereas Armstrong County in Texas has about 2,000. Counties in the US have some government oversight in many states. Places, on the other hand, represent a town or a settled concentration of people within a state and can often be identified by a name. They sometimes have governmental functions, and their median size is about 1,000 people. Our 5 year data can go down to the tract level, which is generally represented to be neighborhoods. They have an optimum size of about 4,000 people. And even smaller than that is the block group. The block group is a group comprised of blocks, which are statistical areas bounded by visible and non-visible boundaries. And they're comprised of about 600 to 3,000 people. As I mentioned, the 1 year data is less geographically granular, which helps us ensure the reliability of those estimates and our confidentiality of survey respondents. So as a result, we were able to publish 27% of counties and 2% of incorporated places in our nation for the 1 year data set in 2023. Our 5 year data, in contrast, has a greater sample size and better reliability for smaller geographies. And as a result, we were able to publish all estimates. Next slide, please. Using the ACS computer and internet data that we collect, the Bureau publishes 14 tables on device ownership and internet adoption by select demographics and geographic breakdowns. The data is available on our data tool, which is data.census.gov, and data users on that tool can access pre-tabulated products and use tables to create custom maps, as I did to create the map on the screen here, which shows the percent of people age 65 and older with a broadband subscription and computer by state. In addition to the tables and maps, data users can use our public use microdata sample, or our PUMS data, to create custom tables. This PUMS data is a subsample of the ACS microdata, and it goes through many disclosure processes to protect confidentiality. Next slide, please. In addition to our pre-tabulated products, we also produce written reports based on the ACS data. This most recent report investigated computer and internet use trends between 2013 and 2021. It also explored disparities in broadband adoption at the county level and included a great section on the demographics of smartphone-only households in the United States. Next slide. We also author shorter blog-style publications called America Counts Stories. And here I have two examples, one pertaining to tablet ownership among households with children, and the other exploring broadband adoption disparities among tribal households. Next slide. So what are the strengths of the ACS data? As I mentioned, it has a large sample size, which allows us to publish geographically granular data. So for example, if you were interested in studying broadband adoption at the sub-neighborhood level, our 5-year data from the ACS could help you get there. Additionally, the ACS offers detailed demographic data available for sub-state geographies, which helps academics, policymakers, community stakeholders, and more explore internet adoption disparities by different factors like income, education, and rurality. We also publish the data on a frequent basis, on an annual basis, and it undergoes rigorous verification and reliability checks prior to us publishing it. And it also provides a helpful time series of data as it dates back to 2013.
Great. Thank you, Leslie. And hopefully my first slide is up, although I cannot see it at the moment. But the NTIA Internet Use Survey and the ACS, thank you, have served as the basis for a ton of important research and analysis for many years now, and they continue to be vital data sources for understanding internet use in the United States. But we're also very much aware that these surveys alone are unable to answer every relevant question. And recently, we've been spending a lot of time thinking about how to address some of the gaps in our data and to ensure we're fully equipped in the future to understand our progress and challenges. Next slide, please. We learn a ton from household surveys, but they're not without their limits. For example, it's pretty common for a colleague or a member of the public to ask me what internet use is like in their particular area. And unfortunately, our current ability to answer that question is limited. Even with a huge sample size of our surveys, those numbers start to get small very fast if you try to zoom in too far on the map. For less populous areas, as Leslie mentioned, we need to aggregate 5 consecutive years worth of ACS data. Now, even if you can work with the 3 basic internet use questions that are on the ACS, 5-year estimates, while very useful in a lot of cases, are not ideal when you're trying to understand the impacts of relatively fast changes, like the introduction of a new program. I'm excited to say that NTIA and the Census Bureau are working to fill this gap, which will be the focus of the rest of our presentation. But just want to note that we also have some other challenges in this field. For example, while our surveys have fairly high response rates, they have been falling over time. And there's a lot of work going on to try to address that. Internet use is also very much a field where the technologies and even the words that we use to describe those technologies are changing all the time. So it's always a balancing act between keeping up with those changes in our surveys and being careful not to break good time series comparisons. Finally, while we have data on online activities from the NTIA Internet Use Survey, we are limited in our ability to measure important workforce and other skills. Next slide, please. So I want to focus now on the problem of getting more granular internet use estimates. And I'm excited to report that last fall, NTIA and the Census Bureau announced a new initiative called Local Estimates of Internet Adoption, or Project LEA for short. With Project LEA, we're working to develop more granular single-year estimates using statistical techniques that are so advanced, you might just think that they came from a galaxy far, far away. Next slide, please. So what exactly is Project LEA? The Census Bureau team is using something called small area estimation to make it possible for us to learn about internet use at a more local level. The first product of this effort was released back in September in the form of the first ever experimental single-year estimates of household internet adoption for every county in the United States. For comparison, only about a quarter of US counties have a large enough population to get to internet adoption estimates using the single-year ACS product. And again, the 5-year estimates are also able to do this, and they're very useful, but they're not ideal in a lot of situations. Next slide, please. The basic idea behind small area estimation is that you take what you already know from survey data and feed that into a model alongside other data points that are known to be linked with the outcome of interest. In this case, we know from previous studies that factors like income and the availability of broadband infrastructure are predictors of internet adoption rates, so we can work with those as auxiliary data sources. Heather will go into more detail about this in a moment, but by incorporating these outside data points alongside the direct survey estimates, you get estimates with smaller margins of error compared with the survey estimates alone. And you also reduce the risk that individual respondents in less populous areas could be re-identified by the publication of new estimates. That makes it feasible to publish reliable estimates for places with smaller populations, all without having to interview any more households or putting anyone's privacy at risk. Next slide, please. For our first experiment with, with this, the Census Bureau team was able to estimate the proportion of households in every US county that had a wired internet subscription in 2022. We were really excited to be able to share these first results with the world last fall, and we put together an interactive map on NTIA's website to show off these new estimates. As you can see, there's quite a lot of variation in adoption rates among US counties, and these estimates enable you to zoom in on a particular area of interest. Next slide, please. While this is a promising start, we think there's a lot more that can be done with Project LEA, and NTIA and the Census Bureau are working together on the next steps. At the same time that we released the feasibility study and experimental estimates, NTIA put out an RFC asking for feedback and ideas for future directions. We've got some great suggestions that we've incorporated into our work moving forward. Right now, we have 3 tasks that we're working on as part of this initiative. First, the Census Bureau team is looking at ways to refine the model for the current set of estimates to get to the point where we all feel ready to shed the experimental label. Second, they are exploring the feasibility of producing even more granular estimates at the census tract level. As mentioned before, census tracts in the United States are basically neighborhoods in a lot of places, and they generally contain between 1,000 and 8,000 people. And finally, they are working to apply machine learning to bring some of the more detailed computer and internet use data from the NTIA Internet Use Survey to the ACS data set, opening up new research opportunities and setting the stage for the potential for small area estimates of those more detailed variables in the future. We're very excited about the potential for Project Leia to help improve our understanding of internet use in the United States. And I'm pleased to turn next to Heather, who will get into some more of the technical details of how the Census Bureau is making this all possible.
Thanks, Rafi. I'm happy to continue our 30-year partnership with NTIA, with Project Leia. And I'm going to reiterate a lot what Rafi said. So Project Leia is filling in the gap to obtain one-year estimates of internet adoption for all counties, because we need to measure time more quickly than what the 5-year ACS estimates can tell us. So the nearest alternative, we could publish the survey estimate from 1 year from the ACS, but as Rafi and Leslie talked about earlier, you would only get about a quarter of all counties. And so Project Leia, using small area modeling techniques, allows us to blend that survey with other sources, like Rafi pointed out, to publish internet adoption rates for every single county in the United States. That's 3,144, I think it was at last count. Okay, so next slide. And so the smaller remodeling technique that we use, this is a very high level view of what that looks like. The Leia model estimates are really the combination of two separate estimates of internet adoption. And so on the left-hand side of the slide, you see that one component is the AC estimate. This is just from the survey by itself, the proportion of county households that have adopted internet. And on the right-hand side is what we call the indirect estimate. And this is the mechanism that we use to bring in the other related data sources and other factors that are related to internet adoption. So this is a regression model where the outcome is internet adoption at the county level. And the predictors are median household income for the county, the proportion of the population with a bachelor's degree or higher, and the proportion of county households that have access to broadband infrastructure, which is taken from an administrative source that measures broadband internet infrastructure from another agency. We can talk more about that if you'd like. And so taking these two separate estimates of internet adoption, we blend them together where the contribution of each is determined by the relative precision compared to one another. Next slide, please. So here's another look at that same visual where we see what happens in larger counties like LA County, where we have a population of around 10 million people. The ACS direct estimate on proportion of households with internet adoption would be pretty reliable because we would sample a lot of households from this county. Because it's a very large county, we would send out a lot of questionnaires and we would get very good data from this county because of its size. And so the final modeled Leia estimate, we would expect a higher contribution from this high quality direct survey estimate where we ask the households directly, do you have access to an internet broadband subscription? And so the Leia model would draw more information from the ACS compared to the regression model defined in the indirect estimate. Okay, next slide. And so you can imagine for smaller counties like the one in Texas Leslie talked about earlier, we would expect more contribution from the indirect estimate because the ACS estimate for that county, we wouldn't have a lot of cases to derive an estimate from. And so the resulting estimate of proportion of households would be rather noisy. This would be reflected in the weight that combines the two estimates, the direct estimate from the ACS and the indirect estimate that brings in the additional data. Here, the indirect estimate, we would expect to contribute more to the final estimate for that particular county. Okay, so that's in a nutshell how Project Leia works. And so the next slide this is the same map that Rafi showed you. This is just a screenshot from our feasibility report. Exact same data, but if you want to interact with the data, you'll go to the NTIA website to look at different views and zoom in and zoom out. So on the right is just kind of a reminder of what exactly are we modeling here, and this is the from the actual questionnaire in the ACS. So we're modeling the proportion of all households in each county that subscribe to high-speed broadband internet service that's cable, fiber optic, or DSL, just as a reminder. And so this map is a gradient. So darker blue counties are going to be those that have higher proportions of households that have adopted internet with that particular technology type. Next slide. Okay, and so this is just kind of a typical QC that's done in small area modeling. What we're looking at here is a scatter plot that compares the proportion of county households that adopt internet compared to that derived from our modeled Leia estimate. ACS proportion is on the x-axis or the horizontal, and the Leia proportion is on the vertical or y-axis. And so each one of these circles represents the county. And so whenever the Leia proportion is exactly the same as the ACS survey proportion, the county or the circle will fall exactly on that diagonal line. So we don't expect all counties to fall exactly along this line, but generally we want them to follow the general trend. You see some outliers, some counties, some circles that are not very closely aligned to the line. This means that the ACS data doesn't have a lot of impact here. The model is drawing more from the indirect estimate here, and these are probably going to be very small counties. So this kind of a handful of scatter of points away from the line is completely expected, but we see in general the two estimates agree, and this is as desired. Okay, so overall, the Leia model proportion agrees at a high level with ACS. Okay, next slide. So this is a kind of repeating what Rafi was talking about, and what we're looking to continue Project Leia. We're going to fine tune this county model for all counties for internet adoption and look at some other useful predictors that we didn't use before that we got from our request for comments from the public. And namely, we're going to look at measures of urban versus rural. We tried some of those before, but they didn't work out. So there are other ways that you can measure that. So we're going to continue exploring that. We're going to look at measures of economic growth and concentration of the type of jobs or occupations in the county, namely science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM occupations. And so we want to finalize that model, remove the experimental data product label, and have an official data product that measures internet adoption. And what we also want to look at the feasibility of going even further, granularity, and look at below the county level census tracts. Rafi and Leslie described, these are subdivision or neighborhoods of counties around 4,000 people, but these are statistical entities that the Census Bureau creates at the start of each decade that are generally stable. And so it allows people to measure change at a small area over time throughout a decade. And they're redrawn at the beginning of every decade before the census is taken. Okay, and then the next part, NTI Internet Use Survey is really an offshoot of Project Leia, but this is a different set of modeling techniques. Here we want to use, as Rafi mentioned earlier, machine learning techniques to explore getting more granularity for those more detailed reasons of how people use the internet and why they don't when they respond that they don't use the internet in the internet use survey. And so that is it for our future directions, and I'll turn it back over to Luis.
Great. Thank you so much, Heather. And that concludes our presentation. I've put up our website as well as our contact information, and I'm going to pass it over to Susan and Andrew to help us further the discussion.
Thank you so much, Luis. And thank you to everybody for joining us for our open forum today. During this session, we have learned from colleagues at NTIA as well as colleagues from the U.S. Census Bureau on two different surveys. First we had NTIA's Internet Use Survey, and then second we heard from the Census Bureau on the American Community Survey. I'd just like to pause to see if anybody has any questions they would like to put forward to our colleagues in person and in Washington, D.C. Sir, please. I believe you may have to use a microphone. You're welcome to.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, great. My name is Nenad Orlic, and I would like to ask, the Census Bureau or NTA collects any data in regards to sustainability, internet and sustainability, like electricity consumption from the end user to data centers or CO2 equivalent emissions and such? And I have a second question too, is do you compare your statistic or use data from commercial service provider, FCC, or any other source that may have this information also? Do you use them or compare your findings with them? Thank you.
I'll just pause to see if colleagues were able to capture the question. Rafi?
Yeah, I guess for the Census Bureau, we have lots of different sources that we could potentially use that are collected by other agencies, not specifically the consumption from data centers per se, but we have used in other modeled products data from the Department of Energy, which collects data on energy consumption and detailed. We use that for a project to estimate what proportion of households use air conditioning, which is not asked in the AC, so we brought in that particular data. So the Department of Energy would, we could probably have a look to see what kind of detailed sources about energy consumption are available. And yes, we do have third-party sources, just depending on the subject matter. The other administrative data that I was talking about that's used in the LEA model is data collected from the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, that measures broadband internet availability for each county and down to the block group level based on speeds that are advertised and the type of technology. So we have a lot of sources that we could potentially draw from. And yes, we have from other agencies and from commercial sources.
Thank you.
Rafi, do you want to add anything to that? Rafi, were you aware of any energy consumption sources that specifically look at data center consumption?
I am not. I think we would love to get our hands on those data if they were available somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to speak a little bit to the second part of the question, right? And and just to add that in this session we've been talking about internet adoption and usage data. Whereas the FCC, as Heather mentioned, is the entity that collects data on where broadband infrastructure is actually available. So we do have that, a whole other data source, and as Heather mentioned, that is actually one of the inputs into the experimental model for Project LEA.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the question, and thank you for the responses, colleagues. We have a question from an online participant. We'll go to him next, and then, sir, we'll take your question after the online participant. So Robert, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, the presenters. My question is, I'm based here in Uganda and I work for a small organization called Youth in Technology and Development Uganda. Yes, I've been listening, and down here we have a challenge of measuring internet. I was wondering, do you offer capacity building training now to measure internet for small organization like mine, if interested in such? Thank you.
So I will briefly chime in that that is a very excellent point that we can take back to our colleagues in Washington to consider. We do think that there are great benefits to capacity building on this topic, so more to come. But we work closely with the U.S. Telecommunications Training Institute, and so it's something to consider for the future. I don't know if my colleagues online have anything to add.
No, and Robert, we also have provided email addresses on one of those slides, so please let us know if you do not have those email addresses, and we can find a way to provide them to you. Thank you for the question. Sir, please.
Thank you. Vahan Hausapian, I'm from RIPE NCCA, the Regional Internet Registry. That is also operates the largest network of internet measurement devices, so-called RIPE Atlas Props and RIPE Atlas itself. So the question is about, well, when do we talk about the access to the broadband infrastructure, do we also considering measuring the quality of this infrastructure, because the access to it is not always the readiness of this infrastructure for the next level of digital economy, for the AI, for all the augmented reality, for this metaverse, etc. Do you also measure how do users use this internet? So is it used only for primary functions, or is it used for the access to AI or metaverse applications and activities? Do you think that there should be some measurement done to ensure, and efforts based on that, that should ensure the readiness of internet infrastructure for the next level of internet development and digital development? Thank you.
So I'll take the first part of the question and then pass it on to my colleagues. So at least for us, the NTIA Internet Use Survey does measure some online activities like social network usage, telework, and the like. We don't, I think, get to the whole wide range of activities that people can do online, but we're always looking to improve and iterate upon the survey instrument so that we can actually focus on the way that people are using the internet today. And Rafi, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, no, that is exactly right. And, I would just add that in terms of the sort of direct network measurement, there have been efforts at the FCC as well as in the private sector with firms like Ookla and Microsoft and others to measure, actual, speeds and latency and other metrics related to the quality of the internet connection the folks actually experience, which I agree is another very important piece of the puzzle. So it's not, one of our programs, but I think another important area for us, certainly.
Thank you. We're ready to share our resources as well and our knowledge for that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Let's exchange information, and we can be in touch after the session. Are there any other questions? Oh, yes, sir, please.
Thank you. Am I audible? All right. This is Joshua Mpere, from Uganda, ISOC chapter. I have a question on the disaggregation. Do you do any disaggregation to maybe like internet in schools Because I think you seem to focus on households. What about maybe in schools and in other institutions? Is that something you also measure, and how, if you do so? Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent question. May I turn to our colleagues in Washington?
Sure, I can start. These are household surveys, which is why I think you've been hearing a lot about households. We do in the NTIA Internet Use Survey ask a range of questions about different locations of internet use, and one of those is internet use at school. So we do capture some information about that through this survey. I understand that there are other agencies throughout the government that also direct surveys towards the schools themselves. And through that, right, if you're interested in learning more about, how the school itself is using the internet, those would probably be the, places to go for that information. But we do ask about internet use at school, as well as using the internet for online courses or training is one of the many activities that we ask about as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Anything to add from on the census side?
Yes, hi. So yeah, Rafi is exactly right. On the ACS side, I think we're a little bit restricted in terms of how the questions are mandated, and as a result, the questions are at the household level. But there are other sources, I believe, within the census as well on other surveys that get more at the school level, or how trainings are done at the school level.
Yeah. And actually, one thing I want to plug in is one of, I believe, Leslie or Heather's slides. It's data.census.gov for access to various census data products.
Thank you. Just checking if we have any questions.
Nothing more online.
Okay. Any questions from the room? Please.
So a quick one from international think tank perspective. When we speak to member states, the trouble is not just data collection, but actually using it for targeted initiatives for those who are not yet included or using the internet. So how does your data collection feed in to the decision-making process at county or state or central federal government level to really make initiatives that target those geographical segments and those household and user segments that are not yet got the access, got the skills, or not yet using the internet for various functions, anything from participating in public discourse, using government services online, shopping online, banking online. How is your data collection feeding into that to really ensure that we get those who are excluded online and included? Thanks.
Thank you for the question. May I turn to Rafi? Would you be able to offer a response to the question?
Yeah, I think, I have heard from many state broadband offices in particular that, they like to make use of our data when, they're designing programs to, serve their constituents. So certainly, at the federal level, we don't have a monopoly on how we use these data. Certainly state and local governments and nonprofits and the private sector make use of these data all the time for their own work. It is not uncommon for us here at NTIA and elsewhere in the government to cite some of our data, for example, in an FCC filing or in another venue where we are analyzing various policy issues. so that I think is, part of how this is helpful. But, we certainly don't think that we have a monopoly on, how to best make use of the data. One very important feature of these data sets is they're all available for public use. And researchers and advocates on the outside do a lot of great things using our data.
Thank you so much, Rafi. We just have a few minutes left. I would just like to invite the audience to share any of their experiences on measuring internet use. Please feel free. We did flag these questions towards the top of the session, but we still do have some time if anybody would like to contribute.
Well, I can share a bit about our experience, not about sharing internet or measuring internet use, but with the initiative that is called Internet Measurement Day that we do together with ICANN. And we do it in different countries, going there and just trying to show the country how to use the internet measurement instruments to see what is their country position on routing security, what is their country position on the interconnection with other countries, what is their country condition about the peering inside the country. So I guess we should have similar activities so we can have more understanding how we can improve the situation, to have these networks ready, because we talk a lot about these digital services, but there should be also the understanding that to ensure these digital services, to ensure this next level of digital development, we should have an appropriate level of internet development in the country, appropriate level of critical, resilient infrastructures in the country, route servers, IXPs, all the stuff that is connected and that is equivalent to the needs of digital economy and society of the future, of now, because now is the future.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are wrapping up and our time is concluding. So I just want to thank everybody for their contributions to this discussion. And Jaysha, may I turn it to you to conclude?
Sure. Again, thank you for participating. We really appreciated the active discussion. It's clear there is a lot of interest in this topic. Our goal today was to introduce it and then to continue the discussion. So please feel free to reach out to us. Our virtual doors are open, and we look forward to hearing from all of you and continuing to exchange lessons learned in this area and moving forward and exploring areas for cooperation as well. So again, thank you, and we'll see you next time. Take care.